Welcome back to Klepper's Corner. Today in history. It is February 3rd, a date that apparently decided to act like the Costco sampler platter of human civilization. You want politics? Grab a toothpick. You want war? There's a bowl of it over by the frozen section. Science, tragedy, international diplomacy, demons in Japan eating beans. February 3rd has everything except a quiet moment for humanity to ask, hey, why are we like this? So today, we're going to walk through the timeline like a tour guide who has absolutely lost control of the group. Let's begin. Segment 1, Constitutional Earthquakes, Amendments that shook America. February 3rd gave us not one, but two constitutional amendments. Because sometimes democracy double fists caffeine and says, let's fix everything, but actually fix nothing for 95 years. First up, the 15th Amendment in 1870, which declared that voting cannot be denied based on race, color, or previous condition of servitude. A bold, noble pronouncement that the country immediately responded to with, great idea, what if we just found loopholes? It was like telling America, don't touch the thermostat. And America immediately installs 12 new thermostats, 5 padlocks, and a literacy test. And while this was historic, it split the suffrage movement so fiercely that you would have thought the country was debating whether pineapple belongs on pizza. The internal argument basically boiled down to, we support universal rights, but maybe in this specific order that benefits us. Nothing says progress like competing oppressed groups arguing over who gets punched slightly less. Then, February 3rd, 1913, brings us the 16th Amendment, also known as the day America learned what April 15th really means. Before this, the government had been running the country on tariffs, spare change, and hopes that rich guys felt generous. Then the amendment shows up and says, we're taxing your income, all of it, from whatever source derived. Which is the constitutional equivalent of someone saying, no, I don't care how you got the money, hand it over. And without that amendment, could the U.S. have funded World War I, the New Deal, the Cold War? No, we'd be holding bake sales to build aircraft carriers. So on February 3rd, America created civil rights in theory, and then immediately funded the bureaucratic machine to enforce them. Eventually. After several catastrophes and a Netflix-length series of plot twists. That's what we call progress. Segment 2, Birth and Death of States, Greece, Benelux, Paraguay, and Vietnam. February 3rd is also the birthday of modern Greece, because nothing says independence like 3 European empires sitting around a table deciding who gets to be king. It's like hosting your own birthday party and learning the guests have already chosen your outfit and life choices. Congratulations, Greece! You're a monarchy now. Don't worry, we picked a Bavarian. You're welcome. And those borders? Drawn so tightly, it was basically Greece, but make it diet. This fueled a century of irredentist dreams, wars, and the kind of political drama usually reserved for Real Housewives reunions. Fast forward to 1958. The Benelux Union forms, which is essentially Europe's beta test for what if countries actually shared stuff instead of invading each other. Belgium, the Netherlands, and Luxembourg basically invented the group project where nobody slacks off. Free movement of people, goods, services, and capital. The 4 freedoms, or as Americans call them, 4 things we get upset about when Europe does them. Meanwhile, in 1930, the Communist Party of Vietnam forms under Ho Chi Minh, unifying factions that had been arguing like a garage band that could never agree on the lead singer. This decision sets the stage for decades of war, revolution, French confusion, American confusion, and eventually a political system that still runs the country today. February 3rd is literally celebrated as Party Founding Day. Imagine if your entire government's origin story was, we met in Hong Kong to settle beef. And then there's Paraguay, 1989. Alfredo Stroessner, dictator, torturer, harborer of Nazis, gets overthrown by his own son-in-law in a coup that basically starts as a family argument and escalates into, fine, I'll take the country too. Unlike most coups, this one actually leads to democratic reforms. February 3rd, the day Paraguay said, let's try not being terrifying anymore. Segment 3, when diplomacy fails. Lincoln, cigars, and exploding books. Let's talk diplomacy, because February 3rd is full of people sitting in rooms hoping conversation can fix things war created. Spoiler, it didn't. Take the Hampton Roads Conference of 1865. Abraham Lincoln meets Confederate leaders on a steamboat to try ending the Civil War peacefully. One side demanded recognition as an independent nation. The other demanded no. Shocking that this didn't work. Lincoln even floated a plan to compensate Southern states financially for emancipation, basically offering them the world's most controversial Groupon. But the Confederates, following Jefferson Davis's instructions, refused to negotiate as anything but a country, which they were not. The conference collapses like every group project where someone begins with, "Okay, but my idea is the only idea." Then you jump to 1962. The U.S. embargo against Cuba begins, a sweeping, historical embargo that still exists today. And the night before signing it, President Kennedy sends his press secretary out to buy him 1,200 Cuban cigars. Because nothing says leadership like ban them tomorrow, smoke them tonight. And in 1969, Eduardo Mondlane, the leader of Mozambique's liberation movement, is assassinated by a book bomb, a literal exploding book. Nothing says colonial desperation like weaponizing literature. How do we stop the independence movement? Have you considered blowing up their reading material? February 3rd, diplomacy's weirdest day. Segment 4, urban hellscapes, Manila and Hue. February 3rd is also when war decided to go full horror movie mode. In 1945, U.S. forces enter Manila, expecting a liberation parade. Instead, they get a month-long nightmare. Japanese naval forces refuse to retreat. Civilians are trapped. The city is shelled into oblivion. And by the end, over 100,000 civilians are dead. And the Pearl of the Orient looks like a demolition derby had a baby with a firestorm. It was the Stalingrad of the Pacific, except smaller, hotter, and somehow even more traumatizing. MacArthur had already announced Manila was liberated, which really shows the risks of speaking too soon. It's like calling a touchdown before catching the ball, except the ball is a city and it's on fire. Then in 1968, the Battle of Hue during the Tet Offensive hits its early stage on February 3rd. Surprise! The North Vietnamese hold the city. Marines have to relearn urban warfare on the fly, and the whole thing becomes a PR catastrophe. American officials had been assuring the public the enemy was weak, which makes Hue the historical equivalent of opening your closet and discovering the enemy is not only there, but redecorating. And the executions in Hue? Absolutely horrifying. It's the kind of historical detail that forces even sarcastic commentators like me to say, wow, humans really need a timeout. February 3rd is the day urban warfare looked America in the eye and said, you thought this was going well? Spoiler, it was not. Segment 5, science, space, and breaking ceilings. Luna 9, STS-63, Elizabeth Blackwell. Now let's talk science, the one category where February 3rd lets humanity look slightly less embarrassing. In 1966, the Soviet Luna 9 becomes the first spacecraft to soft land on the moon. And because the Soviets are never not dramatic, they withhold the photos, only for a British observatory to intercept the signals and publish them first. Imagine landing on the moon and being scooped by a British antenna wearing a tweed jacket. But Luna 9 also settled an important debate. Could you land on the moon without sinking into dust? Turns out, yes, which is fortunate because losing astronauts to space quicksand would have made the Apollo program significantly shorter. Then in 1995, Eileen Collins becomes the first woman to pilot a space shuttle during STS-63. The mission flew close to the Mir space station, close enough to shake hands, but not close enough to be sued for docking without permission. This was symbolic of U.S.-Russian post-Cold War cooperation, which is a fun historical note to remember, considering how that cooperation aged like milk. And born on February 3rd, Elizabeth Blackwell, the first woman to earn a medical degree in the U.S., admitted because the men at the medical school thought her application was a joke. Joke's on them. She becomes a medical pioneer, founds an infirmary, and becomes the patron saint of, fine, I'll do it myself. February 3rd, where the moon, medicine, and stubborn brilliance collide. Segment 6, Tragedy and Cultural Memory. Dorchester, Iran blizzard. The day the music died, Cavalise, Setsubun, St. Blaise. Now we reach the emotional gauntlet of February 3rd, where humanity said, let's make people cry. First, the sinking of the U.S. A.T. Dorchester in 1943. A torpedo hits the troop ship, chaos erupts, and 4 chaplains of different faiths give away their life jackets, link arms, and pray together as the ship goes down. It's a moment so powerful, it somehow makes you believe humans are capable of profound goodness, right before history reminds you otherwise. Then, in 1972, the Iran blizzard hits. Up to 26 feet of snow bury entire villages. Thousands die. It's the deadliest blizzard in recorded history, and meteorologists still look at it like, what was that? Jump to 1959. Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and the Big Bopper die in a plane crash, the day the music died. A coin toss literally determined life or death. Waylon Jennings cursed himself for decades, and Don McLean eventually turned the whole thing into a song, long enough to be its own climate event. And in 1998, a U.S. military jet accidentally flies too low in Italy and cuts a cable car line, killing 20 people. The acquittal creates international outrage, and everyone learns a very important lesson about military training flights. Altitude is not optional. Then, to end on something culturally lighter, February 3rd is also Setsubun in Japan, the holiday where people throw beans at demons to chase away bad luck. Honestly, compared to everything else on this date, bean throwing feels downright sensible. And it's the feast of St. Blaise, when people get their throats blessed with crossed candles. A tradition with 0 casualties and 0 coups, making it the safest event on today's list by a mile. In conclusion, February 3rd is less a day on the calendar and more a psychological endurance test. It's the story of rights promised and rights delayed, empires collapsing and empires forming, cities liberated and cities destroyed, science elevating humanity while tragedies humble it again. It is a day when people reached the moon, and a day when people couldn't escape a snowstorm, a day when diplomacy tried and failed, when dictators fell, when music died, and when 4 chaplains gave the world a moment of pure moral clarity. And somehow, through all of this, February 3rd still finds room for bean throwing and throat blessings. History, like humanity, contains multitudes, often confusing, occasionally inspiring, frequently terrifying, and always ready to remind us just how messy our story truly is. Thank you for joining me on this marathon through the world's most chaotic calendar date. Let's do it again tomorrow, preferably with fewer coups.